Have you ever wondered why no matter how hard you try to believe, things still don't shift? The world of manifestation is littered with instructions. Believe more. Believe stronger. Believe until doubt disappears. But what if the secret isn't in believing at all? What if the very act of trying to force belief is what keeps your dreams just out of reach? The people who draw possibilities effortlessly into their lives aren't the ones gritting their teeth and holding on to faith with white-knuckled determination. They are the ones who finally stop trying. They let go of the relentless chatter that insists on how life should unfold, who they are supposed to be, and what the universe expects. Manifestation doesn't ask for more belief. It asks for a quieting of the noise that obscures the natural frequency already humming within you. Imagine your mind as a crowded room filled with past experiences, unresolved emotions, and the weight of decades of memories. You tell yourself you want abundance, love, or expansion, but your nervous system and emotional body are still reading from old scripts of lack, betrayal, or limitation. Belief alone cannot rewrite what your body remembers. True manifestation emerges when the static fades and the residue of the past no longer colors your present. Adding more thoughts, more affirmations, more mental constructs only creates interference. In the quantum field, addition often distorts rather than clarifies. The universe doesn't answer your insistence on wanting something. It responds to the clarity and coherence of the energy you're radiating. The fewer the internal contradictions, the more the field can align with your true essence. This is why mystics, sages, and those who manifested effortlessly through history never forced belief. They emptied themselves instead. They released the attachments, fears, and expectations that clouded their energy. Their power did not come from certainty, but from spaciousness. Not from mental effort, but from inner stillness. They understood that the universe does not respond to the loudest thought, only to the clearest vibration. You've experienced glimpses of this yourself. Moments when opportunities arrived effortlessly. Moments when clarity replaced anxiety without you trying to wrestle control. These weren't coincidences. They were glimpses of your system becoming quiet enough for the field to respond. In those spaces, your identity loosened just enough for the future to slip past the edges of the past. To forget in the quantum sense is not to lose knowledge. It is to release emotional charges, dissolve old timelines, and unbind yourself from stories that no longer serve you. Belief attempts to build a new life on an old foundation, while forgetting clears the ground so that a new reality can emerge naturally. Those who manifest easily are not inherently gifted. They carry less interference, their internal noise is softer, and their frequency is clear enough for the field to mirror instantly. Their power comes from absence, from the removal of contradiction within. If you've been trying to will yourself into a new life, you're not failing. You've just been approaching from the wrong doorway. The universe doesn't ask for your belief. It asks for your clarity. Let the noise fall away and watch as your reality begins to shift without effort. Clarity does not come from pushing the mind harder. It arises when the static between you and the frequency you were born to carry begins to soften. The journey into true manifestation does not start with effort, but with release. It does not begin with trying to believe more, but with learning to forget. Forgetting the versions of yourself that still echo through your body, the versions that speak louder than the life you are becoming. If belief alone could create reality, every focused thought would instantly reshape your life. Yet the field does not respond to effort or insistence. It responds to the emotional baseline you carry effortlessly, the subtle tone woven into your nervous system, long before the mind even notices. And nothing roots that baseline more deeply than memory, not the stories you recall consciously, but the ones imprinted in your muscles, your breath, your heartbeat, your very reflexes. The body remembers far more than the mind can imagine, and it radiates those memories into the field with unwavering fidelity. This is why your outer reality often mirrors a version of you that feels outdated. The universe reflects the version your body still knows, the version your nervous system cannot yet forget. Memory is more than recollection. It is chemistry, it is voltage. It is the quiet rhythm your heart adopts when bracing for disappointment, the tension your shoulders carry from long-forgotten fears, the shallow breath learned in moments of uncertainty. These patterns form emotional signatures, and emotional signatures become the frequencies the quantum field responds to. You may speak abundance, but if scarcity is embedded in your muscles, that is the signal the field receives. You may intend love, but if your nervous system was conditioned to instability, that instability becomes your default vibration. It is easy to mistake belief for alignment because belief lives in the mind and can be shifted quickly. You can visualize, affirm, and imagine new outcomes. But the body does not update through thought. It updates through experience, repetition, and the sense of safety. The mind can insist that the future will differ, but the body clings to what it knows. Familiarity feels safe, and predictability to the nervous system always outweighs possibility. This is why the emotional past exerts such a strong pull on your timeline. When progress feels blocked, it is rarely a failure of technique. It is not that you are not believing hard enough or imagining clearly enough. The real challenge is more intimate. Your emotional past is speaking louder than the future you imagine. The echoes of who you once were dominate the signals you send until the body learns to release them. The field listens to these echoes, not because they are present now, but because the body still carries them. Neuroscience reveals this beautifully. The brain predicts the future based on past experience. If the past carries fear, the brain forecasts fear. If it carries disappointment, it predicts disappointment. These predictions occur below awareness, shaping your physiological state before you can even think. That prediction becomes your vibration, and that vibration becomes your manifestation. This is why it can feel like taking 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. You set an intention, but the body quietly reverts to its familiar emotional tone. It is not a lack of discipline or desire. It is the body's loyalty to the past until a new normal is established. Memory becomes gravity, pulling your frequency backward while the mind reaches forward. Yet the profound shift happens when you recognize this truth. You stop seeing your past as a psychological story and start perceiving it as an energetic imprint. You stop resisting yourself and begin observing yourself. You stop blaming your lack of belief and start noticing the emotional patterns still waiting to be released. Gentle awareness, simple and present, is the first step toward dissolving the weight memory has imposed on your signal. You do not need to erase the past to manifest a new reality. You only need to stop letting it dominate your vibration. The universe does not ask for more belief. It asks for clarity, for the softening of interference, for the space in which your true frequency can finally be heard. Manifestation asks you to release, not to strive. It asks you to forget the emotional habits that no longer serve the life you are stepping into. Forgetting in this sense is not about erasing memory. It is about giving your body the chance to feel something new long enough to trust it as real. It is about softening reflexes that once protected you, but now only hold you back. It is about loosening the grip on emotional tones that were once survival tools but are no longer needed for creation. If this resonates with you, recognize it now. What keeps you from manifesting is rarely a lack of faith. It is an abundance of emotional memory, quietly steering your frequency. Naming it, acknowledging it, is the first step toward liberation. Even a simple declaration, "I release what my body no longer needs," is not a mantra. It is a signal, a marker of the moment you begin aligning with a frequency built from your present self, not your history. As this emotional weight begins to lift, the field finally has space to respond. It hears the version of you that has been buried beneath noise and distraction. In that quiet, manifestation stops being a mental exercise and starts unfolding naturally as a reflection of who you are willing to become. True forgetting does not destroy the past. It simply removes its authority over your vibration. Memories remain, but their emotional charge no longer dictates your signal. This selective forgetting is one of the most subtle yet powerful tools in the art of manifestation, often overlooked because its effects are quiet, internal, almost invisible. Yet it is precisely this gentle inner work that shifts your frequency far more effectively than repetition, visualization, or affirmation ever could. When the old emotional imprints dissolve, the field receives a pure, coherent signal. Not a mixture of who you were and who you are trying to become, but a single frequency anchored in the present moment. The mind may confuse forgetting with ignoring, but the nervous system knows differently. Forgetting signals safety. Until the body understands it no longer needs to carry fear, hypervigilance, or protective reflexes, old emotional patterns replay automatically. Real forgetting begins when the body stops bracing for what it once expected and opens to what it has never experienced. This shift is first physiological, then vibrational, and only afterward manifestational. Think of your identity as a network of emotional nodes, each tied to a memory, each carrying a sensation. These nodes interact like electrical circuits. Activating one triggers others, creating a pattern that defines your baseline frequency. The quantum field responds to this pattern as your current state of being. Yet when even a single node softens, when one emotional association is released, the entire pattern begins to loosen. A brief moment of genuine peace can disrupt years of tension. You do not need to dismantle everything at once. Dissolving one emotional link at a time is enough to begin the unraveling. Selective forgetting happens through presence, not force. Each time you notice an old reaction and choose to breathe instead of brace, to soften instead of tighten, to open instead of collapse, you weaken the influence of that imprint. You teach your nervous system a new response, and each new response votes for the version of you who is no longer trapped in yesterday's chemistry. Over time, the weight of the old identity fades and the body no longer references it automatically. That is forgetting, the absence of reflexes that once controlled you. The field responds differently to absence than it does to belief. Belief tries to add a story, forgetting removes static. Belief asks the universe to listen harder. Forgetting creates a clear channel. When internal noise falls away, the external world can reorganize around the frequency your being naturally emits, undistorted by memory. This is the essence of manifestation, not the construction of a new identity, but the dissolution of one built from survival rather than creation. This is why spiritual traditions emphasize emptiness, silence, surrender, and stillness. They are not romantic ideals, they are vibrational technologies. A moment of inner quiet creates a gap in the circuitry of the old identity, and it is in that gap that the future enters. Possibility needs space. New timelines need space. The universe cannot fill what is already congested with old emotional residue. Selective forgetting creates that space by loosening the patterns your body believes it still needs. Clarity often finds you in the moments you aren't trying to be clear. In the shower, on a quiet walk, during a slow morning, when the mind hasn't yet tightened around its old routines. These openings aren't random. They happen because, for a brief moment, forgetting takes the lead. The mind stops replaying what it already knows. The body stops preparing for threats that don't exist. Your frequency widens just enough for insight to slip through the cracks. If you could stretch those moments, let them linger, return to them again and again, your embodiment would evolve without resistance. Because forgetting isn't only an emotional release, it is a neurological recalibration. Neural pathways grow stronger through repetition and fade through neglect. When you stop feeding a familiar emotional storyline, the circuits that sustain it begin to weaken. When you refuse to react from an old trigger, the brain stops investing energy in that loop. When you redirect your attention to the present instead of rerunning the past, the entire neural map reorganizes. Your biology begins to erase the version of you that no longer belongs to your becoming. And the moment your brain forgets, the field responds instantly because the observer has shifted. What makes this process powerful is its simplicity. You don't need rituals or extremity. You need awareness. Each time you catch yourself stepping into an old narrative and gently choose a different response, you open a tiny fracture in the timeline where that identity once lived. That fracture is the first spark of a new frequency. Forgetting is not passive, it is the quietest form of self-creation. This is the moment the field begins mirroring your transformation. Not because you forced it to, but because you stopped arguing against it. When emotional noise dissolves, your energy becomes spacious enough for alignment to take root. The future doesn't arrive loudly. It enters softly through the room you cleared by releasing what no longer fits. Selective forgetting is liberation. It is the disassembly of emotional scaffolding that kept you attached to timelines you have already outgrown. And once that scaffolding loosens, The universe does not wait. It fills the open space with the frequency you are finally stable enough to hold. There comes a point on this path when something subtle but unmistakable shifts within you. You stop feeling like you are trying to become someone else. You start feeling like you are remembering a deeper version of yourself, one that existed long before the noise, long before the emotional residue. Instead of accumulating new strategies and new beliefs, you begin clearing what obscured you. Instead of tightening around change, you begin creating room for it. And in that spaciousness, you discover the truth. Manifestation doesn't occur because you constructed a new identity. It happens because you release the one that interfered with your signal. The quantum field responds with precision to emptiness. Not emptiness as in lack, but emptiness as in openness. A state in which your energy is no longer congested with old conclusions or unprocessed tension. When you reach this space, even fleetingly, life reorganizes with a kind of natural ease that feels almost unreal, as if the universe had been waiting for your internal static to settle so it could finally deliver what had been aligned with you all along. Creation flows toward open space the way water naturally fills a hollow. It doesn't need to be summoned. It only needs room. Many misunderstand this state and assume emptiness means emotional detachment. But true emptiness is alive. It is a quality of neutrality so clear that the body stops anticipating yesterday's outcomes. You aren't numbing yourself. You are freeing yourself from the reflexes that kept you repeating what no longer belongs to you. You stop looking at life through the lens of who you used to be, and you stand in the present with enough clarity for the field to reflect a new version of you. Neutrality isn't the absence of feeling, it's the absence of distortion. And distortion is the only thing that ever interrupted your path. When the emotional signatures of the past dissolve, your timeline stops looping. You no longer collapse into realities created by former versions of yourself. You step into a present that finally has enough space to support the frequency you were always meant to hold. You stop vibrating in reflexive fear, in scarcity, in old patterns of self-protection. Your nervous system no longer braces for impact before it happens. Your heart slows its rhythm of tension. Your breath expands naturally and your awareness sharpens. A quiet intelligence rises from within, calm, grounded, intuitive, and fully present. This is the identity that manifests through absence rather than effort. It emerges when internal noise fades. Belief becomes irrelevant once you release everything that contradicts the truth you are stepping into. Doubt dissolves when forgetting occurs, and with it, the need to believe vanishes. You simply are. The field responds to that presence with far more precision than your mind could ever imagine. The most powerful manifestations come from alignment, not faith. Alignment is chemical, emotional, vibrational, and embodied, not something the mind convinces itself to hold. As this state stabilizes, you stop chasing outcomes. You feel full from within. The future no longer feels distant. It leans toward you. Opportunities, ideas, and synchronicities begin to slip effortlessly into your experience. You don't pull them in. Your signal naturally draws them. The softer and quieter your internal world becomes, the more the universe responds. Once you experience this state, even briefly, you realize manifestation is not mental effort. The universe is not waiting for you to prove your belief. It waits for you to stop rehearsing the versions of yourself shaped by fear, expectation, or survival. When those layers dissolve, you become a clear channel through which new possibilities can flow. Not echoes of the past, but signals of the future. This is creation in its purest form. You may feel it now, a subtle softening, a quiet recognition, a gentle yes. Your field is recalibrating. Old emotional imprints are loosening. You begin to manifest through absence, not through striving. The journey transforms. Less about adding, more about allowing. Less about controlling, more about receiving. Less about believing, more about forgetting the patterns that distorted your signal. This is the path of selective forgetting. Each moment you notice an old reaction and choose to respond differently, you teach your nervous system a new rhythm. Each new choice becomes a vote for the version of you who is no longer trapped in yesterday's chemistry. Step by step, the emotional weight of the past fades. The body no longer references old reflexes automatically. And in this spaciousness, life begins to reorganize around the frequency your being naturally emits. Empty space is not a void, it is the birthplace of the next version of you.